जनवरी 1940 में ब्रिटिश इंडियन आर्मी की बलोच रेजिमेंट की 5वीं पलटन ज्वाइन की। हिंदुस्तानी सिपाहियों ने जापानीज का बहुत बहादुरी से मुकाबला किया और उन्हें जापानीज के हवाले कर दिया गया। हिंदुस्तान और अंग्रेजों के बीच एक धागा था, वो टूट गया। गद्दारी की कोई माफी नहीं होगी।
You were charged with Indian Army Act Section 41, waging war against the king.
जब अंग्रेजी अफसरों ने साडी हिफाजत नहीं की, तो वो हमारी वफादारी के हकदार किस तरह हो सकते हैं? अगर जिंदा बचा उसके बाद शादी करोगी मुझसे?
एक रोज अपनी रूह से पूछा कि दिल्ली क्या है, तो यूं जवाब में कह गई, ये दुनिया मानो जिस्म है और दिल्ली उसकी जान।
Battles and massacres reduced Delhi's cities to ruins. But like a phoenix, she kept on rising from the dead. Her ruins morphing into palaces and cities of the great rulers. The city of many kings, emperors and sultans saw each of them nurturing her and leaving a bit of their own.
As one era was replaced by another, they were strung together by beads of immortality. One of them was spiritual order of peace, learning and humanity, the mystic order of faith called Sufism. The order assumed significance as the mightiest of the rulers, acknowledged its essence and its supremacy.
Home to the Chishti Sufi order, dargahs and mazars are strewn across Delhi, offering a syncretic heritage rising above the diversities of creed. Invisible canopy, housing divine aura that has for centuries showered blessings on its visitors. Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti laid the foundation of early mystic order known as Chishti Silsila in the mid-12th century in Ajmer. But it was Delhi where the school of thought grew and established itself, even challenging the might of all-powerful emperors.
It wasn't only those who were coming to loot who were coming. There were a whole lot of people who were coming to settle down here. And among them were those people who founded the Sultanate. They settled down here, the Turks, and then came the Khiljis and the Tughlaqs and etc., 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 all the way up to the Mughals. These people came to settle down here, make India their home. And with them came a whole lot of other people. They were traders, they were artisans, they were craftspersons. Once the route opened, people began to come in search of work and so on and so forth. With them came the travelers and the Sufis.
It actually seeks to establish a direct communion between the God and man through the personal experiences of mysteries that lies within Islam. So Sufism actually emerged in Makkah, Medina. These were the basic centers of faith, or the first and foremost centers of Sufism, where they wanted to stick to their religion, but with certain, certain personal experiences. So right from 9th century, we come across these Sufis from Makkah, Medina, Kufa, and Basra. So, and we find the female Sufis also, like Rabia. She was a very famous Sufi of 9th century.
The silsila started by Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti was carried forward by Qutb Sahib of Mehrauli, Baba Farid of Pakpatan, Nizamuddin Aulia, and then by Chirag Dilli. Together, these saints brought in new ideas and way of life, influencing rulers from time to time. History has witnessed the stature of great kings dwarfing before the humble shrines of these mystics.
Their basic teaching was like egalitarianism. So, and they didn't differentiate between the Hindus and Muslims, and especially they denounced caste system. So we find that over a period of time, people have accepted Hazrat Moinuddin Chishti, and his popularity rose so much that after 200 years of his death, it became a famous center of pilgrimage, and it also became a center of syncretic culture, Hindu-Muslim syncretic culture. When you go there, you do not find any difference of being a Hindu or being a Muslim. So the faith is in, and that was the beauty of the Chishtis.
The Chishtis deliberately kept a distance between them and the rulers, and that I think is the secret of the popularity of the Chishtis, because people went to them for succor. People who had complaints, who were unhappy, etc., etc., with the king would go to the Sufi. And there were many of these kings who were devotees of the Chishti saints. Another name for Delhi was Bais Khwajaon ki Chaukhat, the threshold of 22 Sufis. In the 13th century, Delhi was also known as Makkah-e-Sani, the second Mecca. So, and therefore Delhi was also referred to as Hazrat-e-Delhi, because there were so many holy people living here. So the impact of Sufism was very, very, went down very deep into the lives of the people here.
Hazrat Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki, also known as Qutb Sahib, was among the central figure commanding moral authority in the darbar of early Sultanate rulers of 12th century, from Qutbuddin Aibak to Iltutmish. Kaki's influence on Sultan-e-Dilli Iltutmish is particularly well accounted.
Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki is, in years, he is several years senior to Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. And he meets Moinuddin Chishti on his journeys toward India. They become friends, they travel together, and then Bakhtiar Kaki becomes his disciple. उनके हाथ पे बैत करते हैं and says, take me as your disciple, as your pupil. So they travel together to Delhi, then they travel back to Ajmer, and then Moinuddin Chishti asks him to go and live in Delhi and carry the tradition, the message of the Chishtis to the people of Delhi. So that is how this becomes the center of, after Ajmer, Delhi becomes the second center.
After Shah Jahan, that is from the time of Aurangzeb, again the popularity of Qutb Bakhtiar Kaki came to the people, because Aurangzeb, he dug a well or a bauli in Mehrauli which provided water to the followers of Qutb Bakhtiar Kaki. Later on, from the son of Aurangzeb, that is Bahadur Shah Alam I or Prince Muazzam, till Bahadur Shah Zafar, that is 1857, we find that all these later Mughals, they preferred to be buried in the vicinity of Qutb Bakhtiar Kaki. So and their graves we find within the Zafar Mahal. Shah Alam I, Shah Alam II, Akbar Shah II. In fact, the hollow grave of Bahadur Shah Zafar, where he wanted to be buried, but because of his banishment to Rangoon, he could not be buried there. We find all these graves there.
The stature of Qutb Sahib grew both in relevance and reverence with time. Babur, the first of Mughal emperors, was said to have visited his dargah shortly after arriving in Delhi. Mahatma Gandhi paid obeisance at his dargah just days before his assassination on January 30, 1948. The immortality of Kaki Sahib and his lessons was evoked as father of the nation, underlined his words with the message of peace and harmony among those wrecked by the partition and writing which followed our independence.
After the demise of Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki in the year 1236, Baba Farid of Patan carried on the Chishti order. It was his teachings which inspired Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi. Carrying on the message of Kaki Sahib and Baba Farid, Nizamuddin Aulia stressed on highly evolved sense of kindness and religious diversity.
According to the chroniclers such as Ziauddin Barni, Aulia's message on humanity and love left an indelible mark shaping the Islam in 14th century.
Islam begins in Arabia, travels to Iraq, Turkey, then Iran, Afghanistan, and then it comes here. Now in this entire process, Islam goes through several transformations. And though the language in which you pray is Arabic, but all the concepts of Islam, the precepts of Islam arrived to us in Turkish and Persian. And Islam had been mediated by these influences. So the veneration of great learned men was a part of the practice of Islam as it arrived here.
When the Sufism is coming, Bhakti movement is also coming to India. So, and these Sufis, though they are following Islam, but there is no particular rule that only the Muslims will visit their dargah or they will stay in the khanqah. Their khanqahs or kitchen, which is langar, free kitchen, it was open to all. It was open to the masses. And we find these Sufis are frequently conversating with the yogis or the Nathpanthis, Jogi, which trace their origin to Baba Gorakhnath. In fact, these Sufis are learning yogic practices like breathing control practices and all, and these the Bhaktas, they are learning from them the egalitarian approach, the non-distinctive approach towards the society. Another impact of this coming of Sufism in the religion is that people are becoming more liberal.
Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia is today one of the most famous Sufi saint of the Indian subcontinent, with thousands coming to his resting place and bowing head in reverence. A beautiful specimen of art, even time stays still at his dargah. Surrounded by carved screens, devotees are drawn under this roof seeking his blessings.
सूफी का जो लफ्ज़ है वो है प्यार मोहब्बत, कि सूफी जो है ना किसी धर्म को नहीं देखता, वो सबको अपना एक जैसा है, कि अल्लाह ताला ने जो मैसेज दिया है कि सबको एक जैसा समझो, सबको किसी को बुरा मत करो। इसी तरह बाबा निज़ामुद्दीन औली साहब ने यहाँ पर माशाल्लाह आए, आपने इस्लाम फैलाया। इस्लाम फैलाने के बाद आपके पास लोग आए जिसमें मुसलमान भी हैं, हिंदू भी, हर तरह के कौम के लोग आए दरगाह के अंदर, मगर हज़रत महबूब ने कभी किसी को अलग अलग नहीं समझा। आपने सबके लिए अल्लाह ताला से दुआ करी और आपने सबको यही मैसेज दिया कि सब प्यार मोहब्बत से रहो, और जो भी आपके दरबार पे आया कभी कोई खाली नहीं गया।
Section after sections of this dargah calls attention over its design and artwork, a telling tale of dedication and devotion of its patrons. Carved marble pillars decorated with design of flowers run around the veranda outside the dargah.
For the last 700 years, this dargah has acted as not just an epitome of faith, but also as a vast moral authority which didn't even hesitate to take on the mightiest of the rulers on what they felt was just and virtuous. Perhaps to stamp further this vast moral authority, historians and chroniclers has written great details about skirmishes between Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia and Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq.
There were kings who had tensions with them. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq specifically had a lot of problems with Nizamuddin Auliya, and several times he had issued him warnings. We know that Alauddin Khilji wanted to meet Nizamuddin. So Nizamuddin Auliya said, but I don't want to meet him. I have no business with the king. So he went and told him. So he said, no, but I want Nizamuddin to pray for me. So Khosrow went back and said, the king wants you to pray for him. So Nizamuddin Auliya said, go tell him that 5 times a day I pray, and at times I pray through the night, and after each prayer I pray for the well-being of every living being, every human being, and I also pray for the well-being of the king, so that people are safe from attacks and so on and so forth, and they lead comfortable lives. So I pray, tell him I pray for him every day, and I wish him well, but I don't want to meet him.
Muhammad bin Tughlaq showed great respect for the Sufi saint. He even accorded him with the title Sultan al-Mashayikh, the emperors of the mystics. It was Muhammad bin Tughlaq who carried the funeral bier of Nizamuddin on the streets of Delhi.
Muhammad bin Tughlaq is quoted as, a ruler who is a senile ruler, eccentric and bad attitude towards the Sufis. No, this is not true. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, we find that he is constructing the tomb of Nagori. He is also adding to a roof or the dome on Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya's Dargah, and he wanted to convert Daulatabad as a cultural center. So he wanted Sufis of Delhi to migrate to Daulatabad.
Churning from the story of skirmishes between Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya rise another of the great Sufi saints of Delhi, Nizamuddin's disciple and his successor in Chishti order, Hazrat Naziruddin Mahmud, who was awarded the title of Roshan Chirag Delhi.
When he was building his fort, at the same time, Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya's Dargah was short of water supply. So the Bauri was also being constructed. So the masons who were working in the fort, they were also working in the Bauri. Now Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq didn't like it, and he has already gone to Bengal and Tirhut campaign. So when he came to know this, he said that no, all the masons should come to fort. Masons were brought to the fort. So masons said that okay, we'll work at night here. Now when they were working at night, Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq cut the supply of rogan, that is oil, for the lamps. So then Sheikh Nasiruddin Chirag, he lit the lamps with water.
The Dargah was built by 14th century Sultan of Delhi, Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Later, 2 gateways were added on the either side of mausoleum. One of the noted additions was a mosque built by later Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar in the early 18th century. A humble tomb of the founder of Lodi dynasty, Behlol Khan Lodi, lies close to the shrine. The present-day locality of Chirag Delhi that grew around the tomb since 19th century still goes by his name.
After Sheikh Nasiruddin, we do not find any Chishti successor in Delhi. It is not because of the atrocities of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, but it was because Sheikh Nasiruddin could not appoint anyone his Khalifa. He could not choose his successor, and that is why Chishti Silsila after Nasiruddin Chirag Delhi, it ceased to exist in Delhi, but it flourished in Deccan.
Bathing in tranquility, the shrine of Murid reverberates with the energy under the white dome, carrying the order of his Peer, Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya.
Adding a layer of mystique to its significance, the area around this dargah was also chosen as a site for burials of several nameless followers, poets and even emperors. Shah Jahan's daughter Jahanara, the famous court writer of Delhi's Sultanate era Ziauddin Barni, Mirza Ghalib, Mahmud Shah and his family, and several other royals rest in peace near the dargah of Nizamuddin Aulia.
The site was also chosen by the emperors to rest their beloved. Just outside the complex is the finely decorated tomb of Akka Khan, one of the prominent figures in Akbar's court, who was assassinated by his foster brother Adam Khan. Among those resting in peace is his chief disciple Amir Khusro.
Nizamuddin Aulia once said to Khusro, Man to shudam to man shudi, tan ja shudam ja tan shudi. I should become you, you should become me, the body should become life, the soul, and the soul should become the body. To which Khusro immediately replied, Taakas na goyad baad azim andigaram tu digari. So that no one should be able to differentiate between you and me. Nizamuddin is believed to have said that if it was permitted in Islam, I would leave a will that when he dies, he should be buried in my grave, so that even in the hereafter we are together.
Said to have surrendered completely to the Sufi after having just one glance at him, Khusro's corpus of philosophy and volumes of poetry penned in 13th century have long influenced the court of rulers.
Amir Khusro has seen the rule of 7 rulers in Delhi, right from Balban till Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and all. And Amir Khusro is well known, his contribution in history or in the field of Urdu or Hindavi is well known for his Hindavi riddles, for his inclination towards the Chishtis, especially Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. His very well written historical documents like Kiran Sadain, like Nuh Sepir, like Khazainul Futuh, which was the Deccan campaigns of Alauddin Khilji, Miftahul Futuh, which was the campaign of Jalaluddin Khilji and the revolt of Malik Chajju, and also the Tughlaqnama, which is written for Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq.
His mixed parentage, Indian mother and Turkish descent father, seems to have played its part too, for fusion in his corpus is considered a work of genius, a fusion of Khadi Boli and Hindi melodies with Arab, Turkish and Persian compositions.
It is to him that this credit goes, that he began writing in Hindivi or Dehlevi or the Zaban-e-Dehli, which eventually leads to the evolution of Urdu.
The foundation of a secular and syncretic image of India began to emerge 800 years ago with people like Khusro at the forefront of this Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb.
It's not a minor blip. He's a creative genius. His intervention in music, in language, in historiography, in the descriptions of India, and in creating the syncretic traditions that today we know as the identity of India. His major contribution comes from Khusro.
Khusro died exactly 6 months after Nizamuddin breathed his last in 1325. On hearing his master's death, Khusro is said to have blackened his face, tore his garments and recited his last verse at Nizamuddin's grave.
गोरी सोवे सेज पर मुख पर डारे केस चल खुसरो घर आपने रैन भई चहु देश.
The inclusiveness brought forth by the ideas propagated by Amir Khusro resulted in immense success of Sufism in India, which significantly also added to the further evolution of Indian classical music in both its instrumental and vocal form. Credited with the innovation of sitar and tabla, Amir Khusro is a immortal behind popularization of magic called Qawwali.
Known as Mehfil-e-Sama, Qawwali is an energetic musical performance of Sufi poetry. The aim is to lead listeners to a state of religious ecstasy, to a spiritual union with the Almighty. The music today has become extremely popular even outside the subcontinent. With musicians across the world composing renditions and performing live, enthralling millions.
The beginning of Qawwali was not in this form. It wasn't even known as Qawwali. It was known as Qawl. And Qawl can mean a phrase. It can also mean a saying. It can also mean a promise. So a phrase was taken and they began a chant. It was said that only 7 duffs could be played and not more than 7. And duff is just a ring with one side covered with skin. So you kept a beat on that and this phrase would be repeated again and again. The tempo will keep on building up and people will then begin to get up and sway with the rhythm. And this was the Mehfil-e-Sama.
Qawwali is a regular feature in all prominent Sufi dargahs. Every Thursday and Sundays, thousands of devotees queue up at Nizamuddin Dargah to join the Qawwals in their performance.
The bhajan mandalis were more the creations of the Nirgun poets, Kabir, Raidas, etc., etc., etc. So Qawwali draws from that tradition. It is drawing from the Nirguni tradition. It is drawing from the musical traditions of this area. And it is adding to it the ideas of the worship of a formless God that the Nirgun poets, Kabir and Nanak and Raidas, all of them are also worshipping a formless God. It is this dialogue between the Nirgunis and the Qawwals that actually, I think, contributes majorly to its popularity.
Keeping its flame high for last 1000 years, the order of faith propagated by wandering mystics has now become a crucial voice in multitudes of spheres around the world. While Sufis continue to spread their ideas and teachings in and around Delhi, many rulers came and went. One of them was Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur. In our next episode of Talking History, we'll unfold the events which led to the establishment of Mughal Empire in the subcontinent.